Have you ever prayed for something, really prayed, week after week, and heard nothing back? No door opening, no door closing, just silence. Most of us assume that silence means one of two things. Either God said no, or we didn't have enough faith. But the book of James offers a third possibility, and it's far more uncomfortable. Some prayers go unanswered because of what's wrapped around them. The text of James 4:3 says it without softening anything. You ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly, to spend it on your passions. Notice what that verse is not saying. It's not saying God didn't hear you. It's saying he heard you perfectly, and what he heard was the problem. And James doesn't stop at one example. In a single chapter, he describes 7 different ways a prayer can leave our lips already broken. Not the dramatic ways, the quiet ones, the ones sincere believers fall into without ever noticing. In the next few minutes, I'll walk you through all 7, what each one is, why it blocks the conversation, and what to pray instead. By the way, my name's Kalibe, and looking at familiar verses until they get uncomfortably specific is what we do here. So if that sounds useful to you, leave a comment and consider subscribing. It genuinely helps. Let's start with the one James names directly. Number 1, the prayer with a shopping list attached. This one disguises itself beautifully because it sounds spiritual. Lord, bless my business. Lord, open this door. But underneath the vocabulary, the actual request is, fund my comfort. James 4:3 says, you ask and do not receive, because you ask wrongly, to spend it on your passions. The word picture is almost embarrassing. Asking, receiving, and spending it all on yourself, like God were a supplier. And here's the spiritual consequence. When prayer becomes a transaction, silence starts to feel like betrayal. You get resentful at a God who never agreed to the deal you imagined. So try this before you ask for anything. Finish the sentence, if God gives me this, I will use it to... Say it out loud. If everything after 2 is about you, don't drop the prayer. Rewrite it. Ask for the same thing with a purpose God can share. When your motives get clean, you start asking for things God actually loves to give. Number 2, the prayer you never actually pray. This might be the most common one on the list, and almost nobody thinks of it as a prayer problem. James 4:2 ends with a devastating little sentence. You do not have because you do not ask. Not because God refused, because the request never left your head. This one disguises itself as responsibility. We rehearse the problem while driving, we run scenarios at 2 a.m, we vent to a friend, and we call all of that dealing with it. But rehearsing is not asking, and worry is not intercession. The consequence is quiet self-reliance. You end up carrying weight you were never asked to carry, and then wondering why God feels distant from a conversation you never started. So catch yourself mid-worry. Stop and turn the exact same sentence toward God. It doesn't need to be eloquent. It just needs to be addressed. Father, I need help with this. That's it. The request that reaches heaven is the one that finally leaves your head. Number 3, the prayer of a divided heart. James gets startlingly blunt here. James 4:4 says, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? And that's not about having friends, and it's not about enjoying life. It's about loyalty, a heart whose deepest loves point away from God asking God to help it succeed at exactly the things pulling it from him. That's the disguise. The request itself can be innocent. The direction underneath it isn't. And the consequence is that prayer turns into diplomacy. You're negotiating between two masters, asking one of them to sponsor the other. So here's the practical test. Before you ask, answer honestly. Would I still want this if it cost me the world's applause? If the answer scares you, pray about the loyalty before you pray about the request. When your heart stops being divided, your prayers stop being contradictions, and God can trust you with answers that won't compete with him. Number 4, the proud prayer. In James 4:6, James reaches back and quotes Proverbs. God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Stop on that word opposes. It doesn't say God ignores the proud. It says he actively resists them, which means it is possible to be praying and being resisted at the same time. The disguise here is subtle. The proud prayer often sounds polished. It reports progress. It informs God how well things are going. It asks him to endorse decisions that were never actually open for discussion. There's need in it, but no neediness. And the consequence is written right into the verse. Grace flows to the humble, so a prayer with no lowliness in it has nowhere to receive. The replacement is simple and a little painful. Start your next prayer with the words, I can't. Not as a technique, as the truth. Name the thing you cannot fix, cannot control, cannot become on your own. Grace flows downhill. When you finally kneel in the conversation, you put yourself exactly where the giving happens. Number 5, the double-minded prayer. James 4:8 says, cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Double-minded. Literally wanting two opposite things at once. This is the prayer that asks God for freedom while quietly keeping the escape route open. Rescue me from this habit, but let me keep the app. Heal this relationship, but let me keep the grudge. It disguises itself as sincerity because the desire for rescue is real. The problem is the second desire standing right next to it. And the consequence is a kind of spiritual corridor. Near God, never actually drawn near, because half of you is still holding the doorknob. So pair every request with a release. Lord, I want this, and here is what I'm putting down to receive it. Close the back door before you knock on the front one. And remember, that same verse carries one of the sweetest promises in the whole letter. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. He's not hiding. He's waiting for all of you to show up. Number 6, the prayer prayed while tearing someone down. James 4:11 says, do not speak evil against one another, brothers. And verse 12 ends with a question that should sting. Who are you to judge your neighbor? Here's how this one disguises itself in church life. The prayer request that's really gossip with folded hands. Pray for her because, well, you know how she is. Or the private prayer that asks God to fix a person you've already sentenced. The consequence, according to James, is that you've climbed into a seat that isn't empty. There is only one lawgiver and judge. And it's very hard to receive from a throne you're trying to sit on. So flip the order. Pray for the person by name before you ever speak about them. And if you wouldn't say it with them standing in the room, don't offer it to God as intercession. Real intercession does something judgment never does. It softens the one praying. When you refuse to tear people down, God can trust you to lift them up. And number 7, the prayer that hands God a finished plan. James 4:13 quotes people saying, "Today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit." Verse 15 gives the correction. Instead, you ought to say, "If the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that." Now, James is not against planning. He's against plans that arrive with God's signature line already filled in, where we ask him to bless the itinerary, but never to edit it. It disguises itself as vision, ambition, good stewardship. But verse 16 calls it what it is: boasting and arrogance. The consequence is a prayer with no room in it. There's nothing left for God to answer except yes. So submit your next plan for revision, not just approval. Say "if you will," and actually mean the if. Hold the calendar with an open hand. You are, verse 14 says, a mist that appears for a little while, and a mist that trusts the wind goes exactly where it should. So let's run them back. Wrong motives turn prayer into a transaction. Silence starves it. A divided heart contradicts it. Pride gets resisted. Double-mindedness cancels itself. Judgment poisons intercession. And a pre-signed plan leaves God nothing to answer. 7 prayers. And notice that in all 7, the issue was never God's hearing. It was our asking. Because here's the astonishing thing about James 4. The same chapter that lists everything blocking the conversation also contains the widest open door in the letter. Verse 8, "Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you." Unanswered prayer in James is not a locked door. It's an invitation to come differently. If this message helped you, share it with someone whose prayers feel stuck right now. Sometimes one honest video restarts a conversation with God that stalled years ago. And I'd love for you to leave this prayer in the comments. Lord, teach me to ask rightly. Just that. Then subscribe so the next discovery finds you. I'll leave you with James 4:10. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will exalt you. And hear this clearly. God doesn't list these 7 prayers to shame you into silence. He lists them to clear the line. He wants to answer you more than you want to be answered.